esse ano a gente teve aqui no auditório PPGCOM uma série de palestras, por acaso, né, muito interessantes, de convidados internacionais. E agora a gente hoje vai ter a participação de um convidado nacional / internacional, porque o professor Wolfgang Bock, ele atualmente é professor na Universidade Federal, Departamento de Alemão, né? Mas tem uma longa carreira na Alemanha, uma longa carreira internacional. Eu não vou fazer uma apresentação longa, tem um textinho bem pequeno aqui, só para vocês terem uma ideia, né, de quem ele é. Professor Wolfgang Bock tem graduação em estudos culturais. Como fala isso? Wie heißt das auf Deutsch? Kulturtechniken? Kulturwissenschaft. Em estudos culturais pela Universidade de Bremen, doutorado em filosofia também pela Universidade de Bremen. Publicou vários livros e artigos em português, alemão e inglês sobre a obra de Walter Benjamin. Eu até trouxe aqui um livro dele, um título muito bonito, Walter Benjamin, A Salvação da Noite. E tem a ver com a questão da astrologia, né, no pensamento do Benjamin. Atualmente ele é professor adjunto do Departamento de Letras Anglo-Germânicas da UFRJ, atuando em temas como teoria crítica, romantismo alemão, história da arte, filosofia e estética. Gentilmente, o professor Beck topou fazer essa palestra aqui para a gente hoje, num período bastante complicado, final de ano. Então, queria agradecer muito, né, a presença dele aqui hoje. E ele vai falar um pouco, então, sobre Walter Benjamin, né, e a questão dos meios. Vai falar em inglês. Alguém precisa de tradução para se ele falar em inglês? Não? Ou a gente pode... Está tranquilo? Bom, qualquer dúvida, acho que a gente pode parar e perguntar. Ah, tá.
Alô? Yes. Eu posso falar português, melhorei um pouquinho últimos anos, mas na verdade eu vou falar sobre imagens, mídia e imagens, eu vou aparecer com criança na minha palestra. E desse não funciona bem com Übertragung, transferência no senso do transferência em senso psicanalítica. Se você acha que eu estou um grande professor, é melhor se eu estar estrangeiro e não uma criança brasileira. Desse enigma, você conhece dessas coisas. So, eu entendo e acho que nós podemos discutir em português, ou eu vou usar inglês, primeiramente. Eu posso falar alemão também. Eric fala bom alemão e os outros colegas também. Mas vamos ver. Por mim é bom de falar inglês um pouquinho também. A estrutura de minha língua, de minha palestra é alemão, é claro. A coisa inglês elaborado é uma coisa muito complicada também. So we will switch to English, and I will speak very slowly, and I think it's a very easy English for you to understand. Yes, Eric asked me a subject to speak about, and he proposed Benjamin and the media. And so when I discussed this with a friend yesterday, he said, well, you want to say anything new about this? Benjamin in the media, because almost everybody, each student in the world who studies communication now starts in the first semester with this artwork essay of Benjamin, the artwork in the age of its technical reproductivity, as you know. So that means I don't want to explain too much out of this essay. I will use it. I will make improvisations and explanations and interpretations from the article. It's not that if you haven't read it you won't understand anything, but I think I can think that you know the basics of the article yet. So I will give a lesson for adults, as to say that. That doesn't mean you have, I will tell something pornographic, or neither I will say you have to be experienced, like Jimi Hendrix said, you have to know something about dope and drugs and whatever to understand this. If you understand it better if you know the essay, the text of Benjamin. So I will just try to give you some orientation, or to give you some angles of interpretation in another way than usually people used to speak about and usually people used to hear about. I'm close to Marcio Seligman, who's a good friend of mine, and Jean-Marie Gagnebin as well. They both have their points of view. Mine is a bit different, but we work very close together. So I'm a little bit aware of the interpretation of Benjamin in Brazil, because the Benjaminians meet very often. So I like to, because when we talk about the media, the first reference is this essay on the artwork, as we all know. I try to make something, yes, you see these are the main texts. The first in the Editora Brasiliense, which is edited by Jean-Marie Gagnebin, and she translated the first version of the artwork essay. Na verdade, we have 4 versions. One of 1935, which is a castrated version, then one of 1936, which is called the second version, and then we have one of 1937, which is an expanded version. So the second version appears in Brazil, in translation in Brazil, recently, 2 years ago. I think it's this book with a picture of Chaplin in that. And then we have a French version, which is intermediating between these versions. So the idea Benjamin is taking is that there is a progress line from picture, photography to cinema. That's what he is taking from the Bauhaus teacher, Laszlo Moholy-Nagy. He knew him, Moholy-Nagy worked in Weimar, in the city of Weimar, and the Bauhaus, at the Bauhaus, and also in Berlin, so they met, and Benjamin is taking many things from Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, also this kind of line, to make a progression line with this arrow, which is, by the way, invented by Paul Klee, this also another teacher of Bauhaus, a painter. This arrow, the first time to have something. It's not exactly that one, but to have an arrow like that. So, and today we have the tendency to make an elongation of this with the other elements, television, video, digital image. This is, of course, this is one possibility to talk about the progress, but then we can also say that there is an interruption. This is a sign of traffic I made a picture from in Ireland. It means that it was a stone, but a car went against it, so it broke. So you see that it's an image of interruption. So I will speak about these 2 poles of possibilities of continuity in the new media with this line of progress, and then also with an interruption, with an abyssus between the possibilities of film and the new, or what we call new media. And I will try to open up something which is not dualistic. I saw some weeks ago, I saw this film, Words and Pictures. It's a film about an art teacher who teaches painting and an English teacher who teaches poetry. So this dichotomia between letters and image, it's very poor. It's a dualistic idea. Benjamin is always thinking of in between, and I will try to follow this. So I tried to give you an idea of how Benjamin is using medias in 4 steps, which is a little bit orientated on the biographical scale of Benjamin. He is born 1892. So in the first part, he speaks about media. When he speaks about media, he's thinking on language. The language as a media of expression, or on theater. And then in the second phase, between 1924 or 26 until 1935, he's thinking about montaging, because something happened. He learned to know a girl, Asya Lakis, which worked with Bert Brecht in this period. They met in Italy. And then the third phase is 35 to 39, about the artwork essay, and the last part, very shortly, is about a way of writing which is including images, which he tries to perfect in his last text about Baudelaire, and mainly in the thesis about history, where you all know this angel of history, or the chess Turk, which is a very well-known picture, a written picture. So what I will try to speak about is to give some ideas about how Benjamin includes pictures in writing, in the written text, pictures, and how he thinks that it's able to read pictures. So this is a figure that is changing all the time. He's thinking on images to read. When you look on an image and try to make an interpretation, you start to use techniques of hermeneutic, even in iconography or iconology. And on the other hand, when you look on written text, you look on the characters of the words as if they were paintings or scribbles, something like that. That's an original idea of Benjamin, the countersense of images in the writing and the parolas in the pictures. So this is a kind of switching all the time. And I will try to give you some examples as a hush running through the works of Benjamin. So when you keep your memory or you write it down, you can see kind of lines in the work which open up for the whole work of Benjamin. Because when we go on I follow a little bit a chronological line, but it is also a lie, because Benjamin is also working diachronic. When we see he dies 1940, and the last text he's using, he's writing, is this thesis on history. And there he picks up elements he used in very early texts from 1913. So when he became 1912, he finished his baccalaureate, he finished secondary school, and then he went 1913 to the university, and then he started to write officially. And in these first texts, he's using some things he takes on in his last text again. So it's a kind of circle, and it's diachronic, which is not linked to a kind of progress line in his writing. But of course, he was human, and as a human, we all have to go this way to become older, and in the end we die somehow, this or that way, we know. So I will try to give you some ideas about this. So, but first I take something to drink a little bit. So you understand my English, or it's not too complicated? No? So in the years of 1913 to 1916, he wrote some small texts, but the first important ones is when he started with the theory of language. So when he thinks on media, when we think on media, we have to think in Benjamin first grow, we have to think on language. Poesia, theory on language, translations. So the first media for him is always language. And he's thinking on the borderlines of language, holy language, profane, secular language, juristic language, mathematical language. So he published, 1916, he published a little text on theory of language, about language in general and the language of men. And there he lines out something that is a big program for all his later works, and we can see how it works. And I marked it here. And another thing is, the first part is this on the poems of Friedrich Hölderlin, which was the German Romantics. So, but let's go first to this language. You can read it. I can read it in German maybe, because it's nice to hear. If you can join it. Tell me where. I have another cut on this. When I reach the point, you tell me that I have to put on the next picture. Jede Äußerung menschlichen Geisteslebens kann als eine Art der Sprache aufgefasst werden, und diese Auffassung erschließt nach Art einer wahrhaften Methode überall neue Fragestellungen. Man kann von einer Sprache der Musik und der Plastik reden, von einer Sprache der Justiz, die nichts mit denjenigen, in denen deutsche oder englische Rechtssprüche abgefasst sind, unmittelbar zu tun hat. Von einer Sprache der Technik, die nicht die Fachsprache der Techniker ist. Sprache bedeutet in solchem Zusammenhang jetzt das auf Mitteilung geistiger Inhalte gerichtete Prinzip in den betreffenden Gegenständen, in Technik, Kunst, Justiz oder Religion. Und der Text geht weiter. Mit einem Wort, jede Mitteilung geistiger Inhalte ist Sprache, wobei die Mitteilung durch das Wort nur ein besonderer Fall, der menschlichen und der ihr zugrunde liegenden oder auf ihr fundierten Justiz, Poesie ist. Das Dasein der Sprache erstreckt sich aber nicht nur über alle Gebiete menschlicher Geistesäußerung, Geistesäußerung, der in irgendeinem Sinn immer Sprache innewohnt, sondern es erstreckt sich auf schlechthin alles. Es gibt kein Geschehen oder Ding, weder in der belebten noch in der unbelebten Natur, das nicht in gewisser Weise an der Sprache teil hätte, denn es ist jedem wesentlich, seinen geistigen Inhalt mitzuteilen. Eine Metapher aber ist das Wort Sprache in solchem Gebrauch durchaus nicht. So, you see, that's very complicated, and it's going on like this for 15 pages more. So he thinks that all expressions of all things is related to a certain language of the thing. So that means that is different from the language of men, from linguistics, from language that is spoken. The things express themselves as forms. This can be used, as I'm just working on a theory of design-based design as a kind of language, based on this idea of Benjamin. So he's thinking on a kind of horizontal line which is combining almost all things because they all use language. This is a kind of Aristotelic idea that the stone is falling down, wants to express that he wants to fall down. So all the things that appear have a kind of physiognomic, and this is their language. Only the language of man is with words and with a sound, with a voice. So in this article then he goes on with the sound, how the human voice is going on, and he thinks about truth and language, which was together in paradise, where Adam, who is a kind of agent of God, who created the things, God says a word and the thing appears, and Adam gives the thing a name. And this is the real name, the right name. But then comes the shoot of the paradise, when the paradise is lost. And then also the relation between the things and the words are lost. And this is the situation today for Benjamin. We don't have one word for one thing, but we have a lot of words, and that makes the things very sad because they don't hear their right name. That's a theory of melancholy in Benjamin. But because we have so many different languages and so many different words, there is a kind of secret sense that all these senses have a kind of tendency to be centralized. So this is very typical for him. He's constructing, like the Romantics, a kind of mythos of language, a story, a narration, where we are not in the first point or in the last point, we are exactly in the middle, or somewhere in the middle. We don't have the real language of the words when we speak, but it's not completely lost. We are in a kind of way, even when it's dark, there are kind of tendencies that are not intentional. Benjamin worked at that time very strong with the symbolism. Stéphane Mallarmé, Paul Valéry, and they also think, on Stefan George in Germany, they also think that there is a sense in the language without intention. When we speak, the speaker is much clever, more clever than, the language is much more clever than the speaker. So there is something deep in the language that gives a kind of tendency. So that means, for Benjamin, that language is a medium. And we don't know how the relations are. It is not that the speaker is expressing the media, the language only. It can also be the other way, that the language is searching a speaker to be expressed. Yeah. You can relate this very simply to this Star Wars films. Yeah? You see the power, the people with the sword, they have the power. But the power searches somebody to be expressed. Yes, the force is with you, I see, yes. So this is not too far from these ideas. Of course, it's much more elaborated. So I just gave you this kind of fundamental ideas because Benjamin is thinking that everything is language. This has something to do with ideas of gnosis, but also with the Kabbalah, with the profound heterogeneous interpretation of the Kabbalah. In the Kabbalah and the Jewish heterogeneous tradition, everything has a relation to language. The world is language, even if it's not human, because God created the things. And so this is the expression of the choices, of the things and of the men are in language for Benjamin. This he is discussing, let me see. This he is discussing also in a letter to Buber, where he discussed how can it be that we can lie in language? If language is so close to truth, how can it be that we can lie? A medium which is created for truthness, how can it turn? How can we lie in language? And he also intended to write a second part of this language theory with mathematics, words and mathematics, the relation to formulas. But the manuscript was lost. So he did this also on Hölderlin, and then he was also interested, beside this language theory, he has 4 forms of language theory. One from 1916, then let's see, one from 1925 in his Baroque book of the Baroque drama. Then 1933 he has another one, and the last one is from 1937. So he's thinking bastante on theory of language. And he is also interested in translation. he translated Baudelaire, and he also translated Marcel Proust, À la recherche du temps perdu. Yes. So, and in the book, this is too early, and in the book, this is the book about romantics. Benjamin wrote about the concept of art critics in the romantics. It is his thesis of doctorado. That's translated by Marcio Seligman, who is a big specialist on that. And there he's also thinking about poesy, fragments, and art theory. So this is the first medium on this in Benjamin. The second medium, when we think chronologically, he's thinking on theater. So in the Rua de Mão Única, he, which is from 1924 to 1926, created, and it is published 1928. He's thinking on montagens, and he's using the title from his diary. When he was visiting 1912, he was visiting the theater of Palladio in Vicenza, in Italy, in North Italy, Theater Olimpico, let's see, yes, here, which is very important from the Renaissance, and you can see that there is a kind of trace, a road from backstage to the front. And this gives the name One-Way Street, Rua de Mão Única. Somebody is coming from inside here and coming in the place where he has to show himself. So Benjamin is speaking a lot about show places, exhibition. You exhibit yourself. You come from somewhere and then you have to show yourself. This is the translation of theater from German. In German we say Schauplatz. It's like a fee or something. You have to present something, presentation. So this is one resource for the idea, for the title of the book, where he is using a montage. When you see the title of the book, he's using a lot of pictures, a lot of photographies, a lot of signs inside, and here is a little dog, which is always, I have a doctorand who's writing his thesis about the presence of this little dog in the one-way street. So, yes, he gave that. I will slip through this because this is not, it's too much, we don't have so much time. So he was very much interested in theater. When he lived in Berlin before the First World War and during the First World War until 1919, they had a circle of people who went to the theater and they were writing theater critics together with friends and published that. So he was especially interested in Shakespeare and in Calderón de la Barca, because in Germany the great theater authors are Goethe and Schiller. But Goethe is nothing without Shakespeare and nothing without Calderón de la Barca. So the generation after Goethe and Schiller, who were the classics in German theater plays, are the Romantics. And the Romantics rediscovered Shakespeare and Calderón de la Barca. By the way, they were both Shakespeare, of course, is English, and Calderón de la Barca is Spanish. But August Wilhelm Schlegel, who translated both, and also Portuguese poetry, he reanimated Shakespeare. So what we see today, the ongoing fashion of Shakespeare, has something to do with the reception of the Romantics. But the Romantics were, in the first growl, they were very open, close to the French Revolution, and then afterwards, when Napoleon occupied Europe, they became very conservative and anti-French, and so they turned to Spain because it had nothing to do with the French Enlightenment. But Schlegel was mainly thinking that Shakespeare and Calderón de la Barca were Germans. They were. It's a completely crazy theory, but they were coming from German tribes, he was thinking. So, and in the book on the origin of German tragic drama, Benjamin goes on with his interest for theater. He first, before he wrote this book, he wrote a little essay on the theory of Calderón de la Barca, and he makes an elegy on Calderón he loved very much. And these points he worked out in this little essay, he later put in into this book. So, in this book, which is very important for his work, he is speaking about images. And now we start after language, after theater, we come to the pictures as a media. Because he's giving an interpretation of emblematic in the book, which is very important, because he tries to, the book mainly tries to show that the people in the Renaissance and in the Baroque time, they are using a way of speaking how they go back through the tradition. They are using spellings and the way how they speak from the old times. And they also use pictures from the old times. So they are using a lot of impresas and emblems, emblematics. So the book is dealing about images in texts, in speeches on stage, and also images on the background. So he is developing a model of relation of text and images. It's the first book in modernity about these things, about allegories, and I couldn't find a better example, but these emblems have three elements, and this is important. This is not just something very strange in the background, but it is important because this is the basic of Benjamin's interpretation of film afterwards in the artwork essay. He has mainly, they have three elements. They have a picture, then they have an inscription, which doesn't appear here, but in this picture, and a subscription, which is like a title. So when you refer, for example, to films, when you see a film, you see the picture of the film, and in the film you see writings, books or lines in the street, and when the people are speaking in the film, this is kind of subtitle. So the media is, in reality, it's working with three elements that they are united by a montaging. You can have in the film, you can have even with colors, you have a fourth technology. When you speak about film, you know, you have the image, you have a text, you have a sound, and you have a color, which are all diverse ideas, and they are brought together. I have a colleague who discussed very much music videos, saying you have a music and then you make images to the music. This is not naturally, because naturally it would be that the music evokes images in the one who is listening to it. Because all the music is transporting some images inside endogenously. So when you put images from outside, it's another technology. You bring something else in. And this is what happens in the emblematic. You have three elements, or a framing as a four element, and they are juncted together in these kind of pictures. The people in the Renaissance, they used to write even in pictures without words, like hieroglyphs. They were like the Chinese or Maya writings or the Egyptian hieroglyphs. They thought the theory of Horopalon, they were thinking that it's a universal language because everybody can read it. Of course it's wrong because the cultural context is different and then you read other things. But it's mainly to keep in mind that this is one of the main backgrounds of Benjamin when he speaks about film. this form of emblematics. Or we see it here that the letters are characters which are figures. This is from a reading book, an early reading book for children in Germany, and his first interest on images and the relation between text and images started when he was a boy, when he was using, and he was a collector of children books. So in the middle, yeah, this is Orbis Pictus. In the middle of the book on the German drama is a picture of Dürer, which is an allegory of melancholy. And he makes an interpretation that mainly melancholy is one of the four humors, one of the four tempers. Yeah? And he tries to show, and that's true, of course, he tries to show that the aesthetic or the relation to natural history in the plays of Shakespeare and Calderón de la Barca is given by these structures of the four humors. Hamlet, for example, is of course the melancholic type. Othello, who is very aggressive, he is of course the phlegmatic, the choleric type. So and so on. So this is the kind of basic structure of theater, and this is given by this picture of Dürer. And we can see, I like to show you that this book on the Baroque drama has 7 chapters, and he puts in number 4 he refers to this image of Dürer. So it's central. This image is in the center of the book. This is the German version. This is, of course, this is the German version. This is the Portuguese version. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's a kind of image in itself. So when you see the summary as an image, you see that in the center is the theory of melancholy and the image, this image and the interpretation of this image. But there are of course contradictions, because he shows that this theory of the four humors is originally with the Greeks it's a harmonic theory. All the 4 humors should be balanced, they should be in homeostasis. But this last one, the melancholist, is out of homeostasis. He has something very special. He's getting very melancholic, but on the other hand he's a genius, so he's eccentric. So Benjamin puts this in the center of the book, but in the reality it has to be eccentric. So what this means, I don't know. I just recognized it when I was thinking on that. So this was only shortly to show this, because this relation to images in the text goes on with 2 lines. One shows interpretation of texts. We know that in the Middle Age, in the Jewish communities, and starting with Dante also in Italy, we have 4 senses of text, of meanings in the text. A literal sense, an allegoric sense, which speaks about the images, the metaphors, and then a moralic sense, which goes on with possibilities of humans, and an anagogic, which gives a relation to God, to ontology, or how you can say that. So these 4 senses we have in each sentence. It's a method of interpretation of text. You can read it literally, or you can look for the metaphors, or you can look on the moralic sense, or you look on the ontological sense. But the interesting thing is that we have, going upstairs, a kind of hierarchy going up to God, of course, but on the other hand we have a circle, because all these meanings are in the same phrases. So it's a kind of circle. You can see I put in here a black belt. It's like when you do karate or aikido or something, after you mastered the black belt, you will become a white belt again. That's the great enigma. You learn and learn and learn, and in the end you become very simple. You start in the beginning. Now, this is something that has to do with these senses of interpretation in text. And another line, no, where's the next line? Another line brings us to montaging. This emblematic can also be seen as an early image of a montage of heterogeneous elements that are framed together. They have tendencies to go somewhere else by themselves, but they are brought together in a kind of frame. So when we conclude this, we can say that media to Benjamin was first language in poesia, then drama, figures in theater, then coming pinturas, fotografias, and then coming music, which I may speak about in the discussion later, because now it would be too long about that. I would try to. I'm very slow, I think, with this. So the second part goes about the idea of montage, media and montage. And the first thing that is happening in a montaging, for a picture montage, for example, is that the artworks, which has had an aura, which means it has a respect and you stay away a distance from it, that's over. For these artworks, the aura is broken. And what you get, instead of lines of perspectives, is you get a room where everything happens. It comes very close. A film, for example, has elements that want to grip you. They come on you. They work like a projectile, Benjamin says like a shotgun or something that comes to you. It touches you. It grips you. It wants to grip you. When you smoke hashish, like Jimi Hendrix or whatever took, and then you go into the cinema, 3D cinema, then you will see how it will grip you. So it's exactly this what comes on, but without hashish. So it's this montaging. This is John Hartfield, and they were doing these montagings, and this destroys the aura. It destroys the room of distance and comes a room of closeness. And he is doing this in Rua de Mau Único in the first notes on the work of the Passagings, which starts from 1927 already. And he is thinking on the human who is mixed up between the language and the koisas. It appears very close. So this idea of montaging, which Benjamin develops in 1926, 24, 26, 27, he applies then in the next years, he applies on diverse fields of work. So he applies it back on theater. He discusses 1931 the theater of Brecht. He explains what is epic theater, what is the theater of Bert Brecht. And these explanations are much better than the ones of Brecht himself, of course. So when you read Brecht, it's nice, but when you read Benjamin about Brecht, it's much nicer. Or he applies it on architecture, sketches on architecture. That's number B. Or he applies it on the writer, a bourgeois writer that has distance to his things is over. The writer is engaged in the Russian Revolution. Because Benjamin developed this form with a Russian girl he falls in love with. She was part of the Russian Revolution. He was very emphatic with that. So the writer has to help the revolutionary theater and the revolutionary literature, and so on like that. And then he applies that also on photography when he writes the little history of photography, Pequeña Historia da Fotografía. And in the end, he applies it on pictures, on images, and photography and films. And this is the source for the film. Yes, and then we come to the artwork essay, at least. So you see, as I told you in the beginning, there are 4 versions. First, a very castrated version, which an agent of Adorno and Horkheimer in Paris was cutting. Benjamin was very angry. They published it 1935 in the paper of the Institute of Social Research. And then the second version is more developed, and then comes the French version, and the third version is different in another way. This second version was recently, some 10 years ago, it was found. It was important because there is a correspondence between Benjamin and Adorno about this version, and we never had this version. I think it's Giorgio Agamben who found it in the National Library in Paris. So we can now, and then it's also translated into Portuguese, and now we can read it. It's much more complicated, and but it has a certain sense. By the way, we have to say that the edition of the work of Benjamin is done by alumni of Adorno. And Adorno had a very certain interpretation of the text of Benjamin. So they put the text in a very certain order that some other motives don't appear anymore. It's a very Adornian perspective. I don't want just to fight about Adorno and Benjamin, but nowadays we see that Benjamin had a much more open mind. He knows much more, many different things than Adorno. So it's also work. What I'm doing here is also to show you some elements that are hidden in the Adornian interpretation of the work, and we have to regain it from these things. So the 3 parts of the artwork essay, and this is what I mean with an adult lecture. I think that everybody of you has read it somehow, and then you remember yourself. The first part is about artworks, the history of artworks, and the materialistic part of the artworks, and how they go from valores da tradução and cultus to valores de exhibição, and how they go from the original to the copy. And the film has no original anymore. So this is the first part, and the second part is then about the changing for actors when they play theater, where they have an aura, and when they play in a film where the aura is away and they are in a cutted relation. They play something, but afterwards the film is computed in a completely different way. And then the last point is that the artwork is changing its basic and its direction if it is not only directed to bourgeois single persons, but is basically working with masses and is created for masses with masses, showing masses and recognizing oneself in a mass. This is, by the way, something that is, on one hand, with the new computer technology, on one hand it allows a development, because we can have big screens where everybody can see. In a football stadium like Maracanã, you can see yourself also, and you can better see the play on the screen than on the field. But on the other hand, the computer technology is singularizing the reference to the internet. Almost everybody is sitting in front of his tablet or his smartphone or his computer, and he has no consciousness about the net in the background normally. It's a kind of pseudo-individualization, which is a step back from this point of view on films, which goes on with the masses, to have a consciousness of yourself being part of a mass. This pseudo-individualization means you think you're the only one who has the smartphone, iPhone 6 or something. Of course, there must be some more, but you are the one who has it. course. So this is part, but we can later maybe discuss it. So these are the three elements of the artwork essay. And then we have to say, if we want to read it, to read the artwork essay in the right way. That's a didactic item. How to read in the right way. It's very complicated and very simple as well. Because I work as a redactor for a philosophical journal. And I receive, each year I receive 20 essays on the artwork essay. And from the 20 essays, 19 are writing always the same thing. It's interesting, but there must be something else also. So I try to, when we discuss this, we have to discuss it more in a deeper sense. We can say, this is not unique. Benjamin appears as somebody who is a very unique and origin thinker, but he is not. He is compiling things. Of course, he's very good in what he's doing, but he's compiling things. He's using a lot of other things and puts it together. When 1924 or 25, his academic career ended because he was not approved in the university. He started life as a critic, so he read a lot of books, many things. So this is all working in him, and this he's putting together all the time. So the artwork essay has at last not 2 parents but 3 parents, which is also psychoanalytically seen a very interesting construction. In German we have this construction. We have Vater, Mutter, mother and Pai, but then there is also a third one, which is called Gevatter. I don't know whether you know the Gevatter. It's the friend of the house or something like that. It's like Joseph, you know, God and Maria, and then there's Joseph. How is Joseph? He's the father of Jesus or not? So we don't know. So he's something third. This is, we can say, 3 fathers, 3 parents, 3 mothers for the artwork essay. One mother is Giselle Freund, a German sociologue who had to emigrate to France, and she wrote a book on society and photography. And Benjamin is using her ideas, basically, to write his little essay on the history of photography. He just puts on his idea of aura to that. But 80% of this idea of Benjamin is from Giselle Freund. By the way, she was also a very good photographer. So the second ancestor is Brecht. And Brecht, I will explain, we will not read this, but Brecht is an ancestor in the sense that he says that the artwork is losing as its function as art. We can see that it's going into a passage, that what was art anciently in future has to be art. It can come out somewhere else. This is of course already pre-seen in the 19th century by the people who invented design in the industrial schools in England and in Paris. So you can see artwork that is losing the distance to the society and appears as design. And it goes through the fetishism of mercaderia. So you don't know where it is. It starts somewhere and it ends up. This is a little bit like the idea of rhizoma in Gilles Deleuze. It is starting somewhere, disappearing, and we don't know where it comes out. It can come here, it can come here, it can come here, it can come here. So this idea of mortification, it dies and comes out in another way, is very important for Benjamin, and he takes it from Brecht also. And the third person is the Bauhaus teacher Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, I mentioned already. Big parts of the essay of Benjamin appear already in this book of Moholy-Nagy, Malerei, Fotografie, Film, Pintura, Fotografie, Cinema. Also the idea of production and reproduction is part of this text. When you can get a hand on it, I gave some classes in SD, in the design school of UERJ, about Bauhaus aesthetics, and that is very important because this idea of the progress from in the media, from pintura about photography to the cinema, and as I showed you in the beginning, this is taken from Laszlo Moholy-Nagy. Other references. Let's see. I mentioned already the emblematics, and then there is also a relation to art history. Benjamin is dealing with the Vienna School of Art History, which is mainly Riegel and Wickhoff, two art historians he's mentioning in the first chapters, in the first paragraph of the essay. And when you read it, you can see that he is not dividing between art and factory. They have written a book about Roman art industry in the idea of reproduction and reproducibility. So these are two big influences, and another big influence in this art history is Abi Warburg. Warburg now is a very popular thinker in Brazil. The last year, his works are translated, and we see that Warburg and Erwin Panofsky and Fritz Sachse, they were thinking in a parallel way. They were working together. With his book on the Baroque drama, Benjamin tried to become a member of the Warburg school. Warburg was a very rich Jew. His family paid the bills of the First World War in Germany. You know, the Germans lost the First World War, they lost the Second. But after the First World War, somebody had to pay all the reparations, and that was the bank of the brother of Warburg. And also another idea which is very close is in Benjamin's essay on Kafka, which is the small one, where he points out ideas of gestures. When he writes about the actor, he is referring to this Kafka essay. And at least we have some considerations on the relation between the materialistic side of artworks and poesia, which is very interesting. And there he refers to Paul Valéry, who is, of course, alumni of Stéphane Mallarmé, a great symbolist. And because of the time, I will not read this. The idea is the same, that Paul Valéry says, in the modern artworks, we have a physical part, a materialistic part, a creature, part of creature, basic on the materialistic part, that is changing. Because in the last 20 years, we had some progress in this field. The materia is not what it was 20 years ago. We have Einstein, we have the nuclear power, which was invented at that time. We have ideas about time and space. That is all different, and that influences very much the artwork. So when we think on a materialistic idea of artwork, we have to change our theory of art. That it's not idealistic, the best things, but it has to be on a base on that. And Benjamin is thinking on a materialistic idea of artwork, which does not necessarily has something to do with pure materia, with the causes itself, but it's a way of interpretation. When we refer to Marx and his idea of materialismo, dialectical materialismo, or realismo, it's an idea of interpretation of the world. It's not the pure materia. It tries to show that the sphere of ideas is evoked by the sphere of materia, by your daily life or by special conditions of your life. To give you another example, Benjamin discusses a discussion between Stéphane Mallarmé, I think, and Claude Monet, the painter. Mallarmé, the poet, and Claude Monet, the painter. And Claude Monet wrote to Stéphane Mallarmé, "Oh, Stéphane Mallarmé, that was very hard. I tried to write a poem. And I had so many ideas, and I didn't know. I was working a whole day and the next day, and I didn't know how to put these ideas. I got almost crazy. Painting is much easier. I know how to do it. How do you deal with all these ideas?" And Stéphane Mallarmé writes back, "My dear Monet, of course you know that you don't make a poem with ideas. You make it with words." So that's this idea. You do it with some, of course, words are not materialistic in a simple way, but in a deeper way, it's materialistic because you work with a material. And this is the idea we have here in Paul Valéry idea. So in the artwork essay, this idea of Paul Valéry appears in massas, in the relation of the masses. And this means another idea, another very important influence, and I will always be at the, almost be at the end. Another important influence is that when you look on the masses, you Benjamin is using a relation he learned from Georges Bataille. He was a kind of friend of Georges Bataille, and Georges Bataille was a surrealist, and then was brigand with the other surrealists, with André Breton and Paul Éluard and whatever. And then he found his own group, and this group was coming together in the sign of the acéphale, which means the man without head. And this is a Nietzschean figure, because you know, when you read Nietzsche about the music tragedy, then you see that Nietzsche is developing two points or two perspectives in the Greek art interpretation. One is Apollinic and one is Dionystic. So the Apollinic idea is an individual idea, somebody who is calm, who has all time of the world. It's a person that is perfect, like Buddha in its middle, and he can do everything. So, and everything is very clear. And Dionysus has almost no consciousness. He's drinking, he's taking drugs, he's running around, he's making love, and they are in orgies. And you don't use the head. So when you apply this to the body, it is an idea that Apollon has a good eye, he's very calm, this is kind of aura, we have the distance, and Dionysus is kind of crazy, he doesn't know where he is, and he goes up and down, and things like you cut the head, and you don't know where you are. And this Benjamin applies to the relation of art as an individuum who looks at a picture, very calm, and then drinks a cup of coffee and a little liquor. So this is with a little finger, so you can do that. And then you see the masses that are going in orgastic waves and something like that. This is close to Dionystic ideas. And so he's using this figure of acéphale. He says, when we are recepting artworks, a film, for example, we recept it with the whole body. And then he says, when we recept architecture you don't recept by looking on a distance and say, how nice is the building. The building you recept when you move in. And this architecture is a medium as well. When you move in and when you use it, when you live in it, then you know how it is. When you know the grip, how to open the door, this is what you do, and this is what you're doing without head. You can just do it with the bunda. It's only the body. You don't need the head for it. So, and the forces that the head, the body gives free, and thinking with the pole of the body and not with the pole of the head is something that comes in the end of the artwork essay. And another idea is, of course, the idea of Mickey Mouse as a dreamed figure. So when the masses are dreaming, what are the masses dreaming? So Mickey Mouse is a kind of dream of the masses because the world appears united for him. That's a very important, yes, I know we have to end up, so I just mentioned the name. So we come up to this idea I started in the beginning. Is there a progress line between this line of media, or is it a broken line? And we know, of course, that nowadays we know that the digital picture has a lot of possibilities, but it also has a highly ambivalence of new repressions. If this is we go through this. I found how is the relation between the possibilities of the new media and the repression. And Benjamin himself, he doesn't give an answer to that. He's thinking in both directions. He thinks the artwork in the old tradition, or how to break the old tradition, and then he thinks on it as something that has something to do with the cultural industry as well. And I found this during my studies of Foucault. I found that Michel Foucault, in the history of governability, he is making an interesting interpretation of the liberalismo. And you can read, I read it in German, even if it's in French, but I read it in German and you can read it with me. Der Liberalismus, in dem Sinne, in dem ich ihn verstehe, dieser Liberalismus, den man als neue Regierungskunst charakterisieren kann, die sich im 19. Jahrhundert gebildet hat, enthält in seinen Zentren ein Verhältnis der Herstellung und Zerstörung gegenüber der Freiheit. Ein Verhältnis des Vollzugs der Aufhebung der Freiheit. Mit einer Hand muss die Freiheit hergestellt werden, aber dieselbe Handlung impliziert, dass man mit der anderen Einschränkungen, Kontrollen, Zwänge, auf Drohungen gestützte Verpflichtungen und so weiter einführt. Das ist eigentlich ein schönes, I'm sorry, this is a very good picture for the ambivalence of the new technologies. They give us new possibilities, but on the other hand, mainly we know about the practice of NSA and Google and all this stuff the Snowden found out. We know that it has a totalitarian potency. By the way, it's interesting, that's the emblema of the NSA. It's an eagle holding a key. You can relate it to the studies of emblematic Benjamin did. Let me give you an epilogue, because in this artwork essay, Benjamin is discussing film, and when I said in the beginning we have to learn how to read it in a right way, I think we have to read it through the ancestors, and we have to look very closely which testimonies he is using. So when you read the list of the names he is mentioning in the artwork essay, it's very interesting to read the books of the people who are mentioned in that. Very seldom I see people who are reading the books Benjamin was reading to create the book. And the second one is to see the films he mentions. There are a good list of 12, 13, 15 films, and it's very interesting to see the material he used when he was writing the artwork essay. So I think you can easily make a summary of the artwork essay, but it's much better when you try to go deep in the material he himself was using, and you are not afraid to make yourself an interpretation. So when I said this is a relation between written pictures and shown pictures, in his last works, as the Passages, the Baudelaire book on Baudelaire, and the thesis on history, Benjamin perfectize his style of writing in pictures. When you remember this first quotation of the theory of language, you can see that he fundamentally thinks that the things appear in relation to language. Even if they don't speak, they are part of the language. So it means for him that this second sense of writing, the metaphors, allegoric, and the images comes out. And he's writing in a way in the passages, and I go through the passages, and you know about the thesis in history, I can show the pictures. There are a lot of pictures described in the artwork, in the thesis. The three big ones. The first is the chess Turk, then the angel of history in relation to pictures, thesis number 9, or the monada. The monada is the most important thesis. It's in number 17. But then there are also even more small pictures. He's speaking, for example, he's speaking about the world child, das Weltenkind, the child in the middle of the world, which may have a relation to a yantra sign, an Indian sign of accumulation. So when you read the 17 theses, you see that he's accumulating things, and in the middle is the point of the biggest power where the new child started. Or he went 1934, he went in Paris to an exhibition of Chinese paintings, and then he's using an image of Salto do Tigre. Or he says the people who want to look in the future, they have to see the sun in the horizon that rises in the horizon of history. That is nothing as the ascendant, the old emblem of the rising star in your horoscope, the kind of ascendant. And so he perfect. If you read these texts, you can see how he is implanting images in the picture, because that's an old Jewish tradition. You cannot show the picture directly. You have to inframe it in a kind of montage, and then it can open up in another way. And so I think in the last thing we say, in this way we come back to the writing and to the sense of images in the writing and the relation between text and image, the text reading but also to be seen as an image, and the image seen as an image but also be reading. So in the end, I think the concept of Benjamin ends up with the idea of the artwork, that the artworks are waiting to be interpreted. They are waiting to appear in the sphere of the human language. They have to be discussed, not only written, in the sphere of the space where we can speak. And that's, I only put it because that gave, this idea gave the title to my last book, The Expectation of the Artworks. So this, for me, is seems to be the Benjaminian idea of the relation between text, pictures, and media. Thank you.
Muito obrigado, né, Wolfgang. E a gente tem uns 30 minutos, mais ou menos, 20, 30 minutos para perguntas. Acho que dá para... Darf man die Frage auf Portugiesisch stellen?
Ja, ich versuche mal, wenn ich es nicht verstehe, dann sind wir...
Então, Adalberto, acho que se você puder falar no microfone, que a gente está gravando.
Obrigado, Wolfgang. Eu estava me imaginando aqui o que seria a expressão, em primeiro lugar, o que você entende como figura de linguagem? Qual seria a expressão alemã para isso? Porque eu não sei se eu entendi muito bem. A última parte da sua figuras da linguagem, você colocou. O título. São 4 partes, né? Você falou de 4 etapas. Isso, figuras de linguagem. Qual é exatamente a expressão que você está pensando em termos de...
This has a double sense. You get a Sprachfigur, Sprachfigur, but I want to refer to a term of the Romantics from Herder, Denkbild. Denkbild, thought picture. Ou imagens a pensamento em português.
É porque a gente vê mais do ponto de vista da retórica em português. Quando você vê figura de linguagem em português, é retórica, metáfora, metonímia, etc, etc. E você não vê justamente Denkbild, o lado, né, que eu acho que seria mais pensar em termos da relação entre palavra e imagem, que você vai mais para essa questão da relação entre palavra e imagem, como essa seria a última etapa, né, do pensamento do Benjamin, como encontrar. Então fiquei procurando qual seria o correspondente em português, né? Seria a figuração da linguagem, alguma coisa assim, eu não sei. Mas a minha pergunta vai numa outra direção. Eu gosto de pensar que em vários momentos, desde o começo até o final, a reflexão do Benjamin se encaminha sempre para o aspecto do mágico também, né? Como um aspecto, o aspecto da magia como um aspecto importante. Por exemplo, no narrador, né? O narrador é um texto, Der Erzähler, é um texto que também contrapõe a narrativa antiga, a oralidade, o surgimento do romance, da imprensa. O narrador é muito parecido com a obra de arte, né? Primeiro é o narrador antigo, depois vem a imprensa, vem o livro, né? E logo vem a informação, que é como a reprodutibilidade, né? Que destrói também o romance e a narrativa antiga. Mas aí volta como uma espécie, né? O livro que retoma o conto de fadas, né? O narrador que é capaz de retomar o aspecto mágico, místico, ele usa esse termo também, né? O aspecto místico e mágico também está na obra de arte. A relação, por exemplo, entre o cinematógrafo e o pintor. O cinematógrafo é o cirurgião e o pintor é o mágico, né? Então, eu não sei, eu queria, onde é que você colocaria a questão da magia nesse percurso, né, que você fez do Walter Benjamin?
Yes, I think it has a great influence, but it is a kind of secularizado. It doesn't appear purely in this. Let's start with this metaphor Benjamin, or this picture Benjamin is using, where he makes references and correspondences between the magician, the old physiological magician, and the painter. He says when this old healer is healing somebody, he does it with a big distance, like the painter is painting something, and the new chirurg is coming very close and is cutting, and he has a relation to the cameraman, because in the film it's, by the way, only the Japanese painter of 16th and 17th centuries, they have already an angle and a perspective very close, not with the auratic distance. That's very interesting. But Hokusai and other people. But this is a very typical movement for Benjamin. He tries to, in this, officially in the artwork essay, he is breaking the aura. He says that we have to break the aura, to destroy the aura. It's over. This old artwork is over. But on the other hand, how he describes this breaking, there is a survival of the aura. Because it is destroying. He's not. He says we don't. How is the term? We don't destruct it. The aura. As eine Zerstreuung. It's a centrifugalization. That means the aura is destroyed, but it's going into little pieces, and that has a metaphorical tradition in the Judaism, that these little pieces are messianic pieces. So when God is destroyed, he is destroyed into little pieces, and in the Judaism these little pieces have to go to the earth, and they have to walk through over the earth. That's this motive of diaspora. So, and when they come back, then, so they, the paradise is lost, but the humans have to go to Earth, they have to work. But when they walk and work on Earth, then the paradise comes back. Only, normally, we don't see these relations between the point of origin, the destruction, and the new forms, but only people, gifted people, for Benjamin, can see it. He discusses this in the first art theory of language. He discusses this with Saussure, one of the fathers of the positivistic and modern new linguistic, which is famous for the sentences to say the relation between the think and the word is arbitrarian. You might have heard it. Everybody repeats it today. That means, for Saussure, it means the relation in that the things give their own names, or they have proper names. They don't exist anymore. We don't know how they are, so we have to name them by ourselves. But Benjamin says, this is a bourgeois idea of language theory. Somebody who has not patience anymore. He's waiting, and he says when people are gifted, they can still feel which name is right and which name is wrong, and that is magic. It's a very homeopathic doses, very homeopathic doses. And in the narrator essay, he tries to do the same. He's speaking about Leskov, who is a very. This is the time of the Russian Revolution, where the Russians are doing the revolution, and everybody is supporting the revolution. Leskov was a reactionary. He was even more reactionary than the Tsar. So in this time, Benjamin is placing in this revolutionary Russia rescue, redemption of somebody like Leskov.
Everybody was discussing Gogol, Dostoevsky, and Turgenev, and he comes back to Leskov.
Leskov, yes. He's something. So he's thinking in extremes. That's very. So, and these are contradictions in the work of Benjamin. He's a friend of mine says always, Benjamin is thinking against himself. This he has common with Nietzsche. Nietzsche is also thinking against himself. Adorno is more consequent. He says, I defend the artwork, the traditional artwork, because what comes after the artwork is only barbarian. So we have to defend the institution of art. Benjamin says, no, okay, this exists, that we have to take into account, but let's see where we go when the art is leaving the Schauplatz. Where does it go? Where does it appear? This is based on the Judaism, because the Jews have this idea, especially in Galicia or somewhere, that the Messiah is born in a little child somewhere between the beggars or something. Like in the Tibetan Buddhism, not in the rich palace, but in the favelas or something.
So, my question is, when I read this text about the language in general and the language of man, which is an early Benjamin, and then I thought, oh, it's an early Benjamin, so it seems easy. So, completely wrong, very difficult. So the thing is, I had this impression that that what is he trying to say? That the connection between words and things is not completely arbitrary. But, okay, so my first question is, do you agree with that? And the second question is, in agreeing with that, how does it work? So how did Benjamin put it? That's just it.
Of course, we have to take into account that Benjamin is always seen in the perspective of Adorno, because of the edition of the work. That's the materialistic basic of the edition. And for Adorno, there is a kind of meta-language, which is the Hegelian philosophical language, which has no image in itself. So when Benjamin is speaking about the second allegoric sense of language, the analytic language of Hegel has allegories, but mainly it's an analytic language for Adorno. So Adorno fought a long time with Benjamin about this. He thought that this is kind of superior language. For Benjamin, not. Benjamin, all the time, when he was writing as a theoretician about the theory of language or education, he was all the time feeling, thinking, and being a poet. For him, this was not a difference. So he felt himself. He was very close. All his friends were poets. Not everybody, but he had a lot of poets as friends. And he was writing poems as well. By the way, very bad poems. That's a bit sad, because he's much better in writing about poetry than making poems by himself. This is not very well known, but so for him, he tries to be an artist. So when he is writing something, he takes all these things in account. This means that one of his first experience is to read Mallarmé and the symbolism. This is important because he didn't like Stefan George. He didn't like Stefan George and he didn't like Heidegger. He was studying together with Heidegger. He met him personally. And he was very close to Rickert in Freiburg, to the Neukantian Rickert, what my colleague Patricia Lavelle, who is a Brazilian, now living in Paris, but she comes back to Rio next year, I think. She found it out and she proves it, that a lot of the terminology of Benjamin is using is taken from Rickert. Heidegger hated Rickert. He was his doctor father, or his habilitation father, I don't remember very well. They had a very hard relation. So Benjamin always was thinking as a poet, and in this, even when he writes profound text, he tries to find it out. So when he read Mallarmé, Mallarmé is of course known by his symbolistic writings, and he was a friend of Stefan George, and Stefan George, for example, like Mallarmé, they invented a poetic language which has no sense, only a poetic expression. So the main terminology for Benjamin in this is mimesis. In a Platonic sense, a little bit different from Aristotelic sense, but it is like there is a mimesis, an expression between the things and the words. They come together, and it's working and it's not working. And he is favorizing a play, a children play, which everybody can play. He says, you give 5 or 6 terms: chair, rain, camera, face, food, drink. And then you try to put these 5 or 6 terms together in 3 or 4 sentences, in the shortest way you can do it. When everybody of you tries to do it, and then after half an hour we ask each one to read the result. That's very interesting what then happened. When I experienced that, it was always the same. It was always clear who won the copper. Because when you try half an hour, you try yourself, you come very fast to the limits of your capacity. And when you're on the edge of your capacity, you can very easily say to the other one who is much better than you, to say, thank you, you are really much better. I have to admit. Yeah? Because there's no briga anymore, not to say mine is better or yours, because you're already in the end. And this judgment has something to do with the real judgment, with truth in Benjamin. When this intriga of the bourgeois society, I want to be better than you, my speech is much more original, you are stupid, your English is bad, my Portuguese is really good, your Portuguese is bad, my German is better, like this. When we end up this bourgeois universe of intrigue, then appear the order of the things. And this, for Benjamin, is the order of truth. And this is, then we can see and can prove and can say, is that word right? Is it not right? Is Saussure right? Is Benjamin right? Which theory is right on that? But there must be a base for that. This idea is different from the Habermasian idea of communication, which is a reduction of the Benjaminian idea. Yes. I hope it was an answer anyway.
Bom, se não tiver mais perguntas, eu vou fazer uma última pergunta que tem conexão com o que o Adalberto falou sobre a questão da magia. Porque, não sei como você vê, penso que essa ideia de magia, para mim, tem a ver com um efeito que é exercido diretamente, de forma não mediada, sobre o sujeito, e que, para mim, tem a ver um pouco com essa questão do aspecto material da obra. Quando a gente encontra uma obra de arte, você tem uma experiência mediada, por exemplo, pela linguagem que você interpreta, busca o sentido, né? Mas existe aquela outra dimensão imediata que é o choque com a obra, que é de um aspecto material, carnal, que a gente sente, inclusive, no corpo. Então, me parece que, se a gente lê dessa maneira, Benjamin realmente é um precursor dessa ideia de que é preciso levar em consideração não apenas a interpretação, o sentido da obra, mas aquilo que ela traz como efeito sensorial, como efeito material. E talvez por isso, por exemplo, ele tinha todo esse interesse pela poesia barroca quando ela trabalhava o aspecto gráfico, né, da página do livro. Bom, não é uma pergunta, mas para saber se você concorda com essa leitura dessa dimensão materialista. Quer dizer, a metáfora da magia seria realmente profana, né? Porque eu acho que ela aponta um pouco para esse que ele chamou efeito imediato, aquilo que tem a ver com a materialidade da obra.
Yes, but that's an interesting question. Because you mentioned material, and in the Baroque time, the Baroque time was an age of destruction. It's an age of destruction and depression, and the experience was very much of destruction when you read this. So the material, also of the language, appears destructed. For example, in the piece of Calderon, Mariamne and Herodes, mais grande monstro do mundo. Somebody knows this of you? It's about, was heißt Eifersucht? Inveja? Inveja? Eifersucht? Jealousy. Jealousy, they say, yes. Herodes is the biggest monster because he tried to kill Jesus. In the Christian tradition, he tries to kill. But Calderon de la Barca made this piece the biggest monster on earth, jealousy. Not Herodes himself, but jealousy. So there appears a letter that is broken. The letter is broken. They destroyed the paper and something like that. That's, of course, a metaphor for the broken language and for the destruction of the language. And there is a pure relation between the things and the people. And this is something, they appear like magic. But of course, this is all related in a moralic world because they behave bad. So in the first scene, it's very interesting. Herodes has a very beautiful woman, Mariamne, and she went to an astrologue in Jerusalem. He's king of Jerusalem and she's the queen of Jerusalem. And the astrologue says, you will be killed through the hand of the biggest monster on earth, jealousy or whatever, the biggest monster on earth, and the knife of your husband plays a big role in that. And he says, the Herodes says, oh, what is stupid superstition? I don't believe in that. Who believes in that? We are modern people, we don't believe in that. And to show you that we are bigger than the stars, I show you what will happen. I throw the knife out of the window. He throws it out of the window, and then you hear a sound, ah, because a messenger came, a messenger who wanted to bring him the news about the battle which he lost, and he killed his best, his best soldier. It's like, so yeah, so the knife is, of course, the relation. It's the materialization of the forces of the stars. And it's very. And then later he sees the Roman emperor, and he sees that the Roman emperor has a picture of his beautiful wife in his house, and then he says he's very jealous, and then he wants to kill him with the same knife, which he took from the other one. And then the emperor turns the back, and when he tries to kill him, the picture of the beautiful Mariamne fall down exactly in front of the other one, and so he killed the picture. So there are a lot of scenes in this drama of Calderon which appear magic, but they are magic, or all these things, they are representing the bad moralic order. And so the magic, of course it's magic because it's astrological, but it is not separated from the character of the people. It's a little bit when we discuss on films, trash films, when you see the returning of the spiders or a lot of piranhas coming like that, then you see, when you exactly see this, it is always a moralic background in these exploration films. Of course, the people want to show these stupid things, and it's very nice also. I like it sometimes. But the construction of the story is always the people are on the beach and they are fucking together, or they have orgies, and then the piranhas are coming, biting them. It's always a very Christian Spanish Inquisition or something in the background. It's very simple. And this is but Benjamin tries to show that Calderón de la Barca was not following the Spanish Inquisition and the Spanish prejudice and Christian prejudice on Herodes as a king of Jews. He tries to show that Herodes loved very much his wife and he wanted to protect her. That's very interesting, because he says that the Spanish and the Portuguese poetry and drama is the most sensual in the world. This he takes from Schlegel. So, and this sensuality is very close to magic, because love is of course magic. We cannot explain. Another example is the letter to Buber, 1915. The First World War was August 1914. And so in Germany the Jews had some liberty. They were fighting, they were paying the war, as we heard, and they were German soldiers in the First World War. So the anti-Semitism was a bit on the level like Dreyfus in France. So it existed, but the emperor worked with the Jews. So many of the Jews fought in the war, in the French-German War, 1871. So when the First World War came, the Jews tried to mobilize their people for the war. So Martin Buber, who was an existentialist in the Jewish movement, he was asking Walter Benjamin to write a paper of advertisement, of propaganda, for the Jews to join the war. And he wrote back that he never had heard such a stupid idea to use the language against truth. And then he tries to explain why the language has a relation to truth. And he said, it's magic. It's a magic relation. It is because there is a secret correspondence between the things. And when you lie, of course you can use the language of truth for lying, but it has some consequences, like the knife falling, or something like that, or the big frogs are coming and the piranhas. So I almost would say I became famous for pointing out the relation of Benjamin to magic. So they always, because when this book, I wrote the first big monography of this stuff. So always I have to speak about that. So I try to appear a little bit more bourgeois or human or whatever to say that. I don't, but we can, if you really like, we can the next time speak much more about it. Yes. Yeah, because media and magic has a close relation. Of course, not like, but with language. For Benjamin, this is very clear. He was how you call that? Somebody who reads the handwriting of the people, a graphologue. Huh? Cephalogist? Yeah, graphologist. Yes, he worked partly like that, and so he for him, this, now I lost my idea, but this was very important for him all the time.
Muito obrigado, vielen Dank, Wolfgang. Agradeço a presença de vocês também. Não sei se acho que passou uma lista de presença, não sei se vocês colocaram um e-mail. Se vocês quiserem colocar um e-mail, vocês podem receber quando a gente tiver outras palestras, né, como essa, que a partir de março do ano que vem a gente deve voltar, a gente avisa, e vai ser um prazer recebê-lo novamente aqui. Muito obrigado e uma boa noite a todo mundo.